Okay, welcome folks, I'm Brandon Schaefer. In this video I'm going to show you how I painted these reflections on this painting here. So you can see I just painted the rest of the canvas green. You can do a darker color toward the bottom, whatever color the foreground is going to be. So what I'm doing here is I'm throwing on some of the sky color, which is kind of hard to see in this video because the sky is really washed out by the video camera and the lighting for some reason. But it's more of a dark, not really dark, but more of a pink, burnt sienna kind of a sky, just kind of a neutral sky. So that's what I'm working with here, just some white, uh, pink, burnt sienna, a little bit of blue, just this light brown pink color. So I'm just scrubbing it on there, and I'm making sure I get some good coverage on the canvas. Pretty simple. So what I did there is just the base color of the water created kind of the line of the shore where the water meets the land. So very simple. And I use like a number 8 or number 6 filbert brush. People always ask me what size my brushes are, or what kind of brushes I use. I mean, they're just bristle brushes. I use like a number 12, 10, and then either like an 8 or a 6 and a 4 filbert, and some small liner brushes. So I mean, it's really simple. Don't stress too much over the brushes. Just do a couple paintings and see which brushes you use the most, and you'll start figuring out which ones are right for you. Now this video was in real time. There was no editing or anything, so keep that in mind. I'm doing this in real time. So I have some dark brown here, and I'm doing kind of the shore, actually putting on a little bit of bushes here on the edge of the kind of the coastline of this lake or whatever this water is. Dark brown or a dark green. So I'm just kind of scumbling around a little bit. There's a good amount of paint on the brush because I needed some good coverage. And you kind of want to do all this, the water and everything, make sure the foreground is dry, and then go on to the water, and then do these bushes here like I just showed. So when you see when I'm not painting here, I'm kind of like mixing up my colors, washing the brush off, mixing up a new color to add on, layer on. So I have the dark foreground there. And here I went into some white with some burnt sienna, a much lighter tone than the water. And the water's still wet, so I'm kind of blending it in there. It's like a number 2 or number 4 filbert. Just making it look like water. You can make it as smooth as you want or as rough as you want. The more strokes you make, the more brush strokes that are showing, the more choppier or rough the water is going to look. But I'm kind of highlighting where the light is shining on the sky. And I do it more towards the end, a little lighter too, but I just threw it in there to give a little bit of variation for now. That's one of the most important things with acrylic painting and making paintings look realistic is variation. That's a huge thing. Having variances of color, contrast, value, all this different shades and such. And the easiest way to do it is just by blending. You can get, a lot of variation in color without having to mix a ton of different colors. Alright, so you see what I'm doing here? I lightened up the brown color a little bit that I was using for the shore and the bushes. Made it a little lighter, and I'm softly throwing this on. It's kind of blending with the water, so that it's making some lights, as making it lighter. One thing about reflections that I need to note for you guys is that the darks and reflections generally, this is a general statement, but if you study a lot of photographs and reflections and things, you'll notice that the darks are lighter and the lights are darker. Okay? Darks are lighter and the lights are darker. So as I'm reflecting these dark bushes, the darks in the water are going to be lighter than the the real bushes. And also when I do like a highlight of the sky or something like that, a light color, it's going to be darker than the actual sky. So hopefully that makes sense. So keep that in mind when you're doing these reflections. So I'm just softly painting it on here, taking my time. I don't want to scrape off any of the watercolor because the paint's still wet. And if your paint starts coming off, just wait a little more longer for it to dry, because you're most likely layering too quickly, or you use too much paint, or sometimes it just doesn't mix correctly. So you have to wait, let the bottom layer dry, and then just layer on top. But it worked working fine for me, so I just start layering on and kind of getting it to blend with the watercolor. So, or the color of the water, not watercolor. This is acrylic, but the color of the water there, which makes it lighter. So there you can see some reflections there. And the thing that really separates the reflections from the actual object or bush is going to be some water lines. Using like almost the sky color, just a light color with burnt sienna or red, orange, yellow. Just a lighter color with some white mixed in, using a liner brush. I'll probably get into that here very shortly. But I thank you guys for watching this and being patient here. Alright, so here I'm actually putting on some more variation, kind of highlighting these bushes. I think I'm using some lighter browns. And then I'm kind of just doing the same thing with the reflections, adding a little bit on the reflections there too. Yeah. Just some more variation of color here, using a very small filbert brush. Probably, I'm sorry I don't know the real sizes of my brushes. I'll have to make a video on that, and it's probably a number 2 or a number 4. Just something little, something that just feels right to you. So there you can see I'm doing some variation on the reflections to kind of make it match what's above it. It depends on how much detail you want to put into your painting. What degree of detail to get the amount of realism that you want, because I don't do super realistic paintings, so I have more of an impressionistic style where I just try to get the mood and the feeling of it. But I am delving deeper into like realistic lighting, and there has to be a lot of realistic elements here. And I almost think the foreground grass could actually be a little lighter here. The field around the whole tree probably could have been a little lighter. But, that's what you learn from each painting. Next time I'll keep that in mind, and, you start getting an eye for these things. So here I have a small liner brush, probably number 1 or something. It's a really small brush. And I'm using a light color, like I said earlier, like a white mixed with orange or burnt sienna, some kind of light color, and just drawing horizontal lines. You want to keep them as straight as possible for the most part. There can be little waves in them. You want it to look natural. But by keeping them horizontal, it just keeps it keeps it realistic. You know, just study pictures of reflections and waves and stuff, and they're usually always horizontal. You know, they mirror the horizon line. You know, it's always horizontal. So I just add a lot of these, a little bit of details. You know, they don't have to be just on the shoreline. You can make them, you know, down a little farther, more toward the foreground. I know it's kind of, the video's not too detailed there, but you know, just make sure you keep stepping back and looking at your painting and try to get it to look as realistic as possible. Sometimes when you look too close at it all the time and you step back and you realize that you added way too many highlights or something, you know, way too many lines. It doesn't look realistic at all. So just put a few on and step back, take a look, and just assess and judge of where you need some more, because that's the important thing. So there you can see I'm just continually adding more, putting some a little bit below the shoreline, more of into the reflections of the bushes, like little ripples and such. And those don't have to be as bright as the actual water line. Hope that makes sense. And you know, acrylics usually dry darker, so sometimes you have to go back over the water lines again to get them to, just in a few areas, to put some more highlights on them so it stands out. Alright, so here I'm using a small brush and I'm just kind of like highlighting the bushes, adding some details. Just more variation. I felt that it needed to look a little more realistic. And then I'm adding the same thing to the reflections. Just little touches here and there, nothing too much. You know, that's one of the mistakes a lot of beginners make, that I used to make a lot, is adding too many highlights. It kind of destroys the contrast and destroys the aesthetics of it. You know, too many highlights just kills the realism. And it just looks really amateurish. Okay, so here I realized, almost had all the reflections finished, and then I realized that I almost forgot to reflect the tree. So I started just a dark brown color, a little lighter than what the tree actually is, and just painted that on there. And I probably could have actually almost put some of the leaves in there too that are actually on the tree toward the bottom, because reflections usually aren't a mirror image of what's above it. Usually, like in this kind of reflection, I could actually see what's underneath the tree. You know, like if I did leaves at the bottom of the canvas there, it would be showing what's, you know, like if you're under the tree looking up. It's kind of hard to explain. Maybe I'll do another video on that. But here I just make some more ripples, highlights. Sometimes it's cool to put some dark color as well, and do some little lines like I'm doing here, which adds shadows in the water. kind of create some little ripples. Because if you do just highlights, you know, there's got to be some shadows in there too if the water's moving. So keep that in mind. It's usually like in a dark area, like the shadows or the reflections of the tree and such, you would do light lines over it so they would show up, and then in the water area where it's lighter, you do a few dark lines to show shadow ripples. So hopefully that makes sense. I know in the future I'm gonna make, you know, I'm just gonna keep doing as many reflections and water videos as I can, because a lot of people have trouble with these, and it's one of the hardest things to paint. So I mean, I'm sure I'll do more in the future and some demonstrations so I can actually show you while I'm talking instead of just doing commentary. So here you can see I'm highlighting the sky, well, the water, but more making it lighter where the light source is, you know, hitting the water. Just throwing it on there real delicately, kind of blending it out. Not a lot of paint here because you don't want to mess it up after you just did all that. So there you can see that it looks more complete now. You can see where the light's really shining on the water. So that's really important. Alright, so here I'm adding some lighter lines back in because the other lines kind of dried darker, so I'm kind of highlighting the water lines. You don't want to do it too many areas, just little touches here and there. Just something for the eye to catch their eye on. And that's about all there is to painting water and reflections. At least a primer, you know, a starting point. But there's so many different kinds of reflections, you have to just keep practicing and take some stock photo references. And anyway, thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe to these videos if you wish to see more. Like my Facebook page, add me on there. And thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. Peace be with you. Thank you.